おはようございます。クリスタです。If my voice sounds a little bit tired, I just woke up. But welcome to lesson 13 and 14 for Japanese 2. So we're going to be going over the Rikai textbook, the Katsudo textbook, and the class notes and the grammar notes that are in Canvas. So first off, let's look at the Rikai textbook on page 120. And we're going to be looking at this first page right here, going over vocab, the kanji, and any other words that we find along the way that may not be in any lessons before. So the first one is right next to the picture right here. It says kuko, kuko. So that means airport. And then down at the bottom, it has a lot more vocab words. It looks like most of these are nouns with a few. So most of them are nouns with a few verbs in there. So the first one is shucho shimasu. So it's a mix of business trip and to do. So you basically go on a business trip. So it's shucho shimasu. Okay, and B is honsha. Honsha means main office. Then C says shupatsu jikan. Shupatsu jikan. So remember the little tsu is like a stopper kind of almost. So remember it's pa, not pa. So it's like a little explosion kind of. So shupatsu jikan is departure time. Remember jikan means time. So shupatsu is departure, so departure time. D, it says okurimasu, which means to send something. E is okuri ni ikimasu. So you're going to send something. So it's kind of like iki is to go, so you're like going to send something. It's slightly different than okurimasu, which just means to send. Okay, and then F is shisha, which means branch office. G is dochaku jikan. Dochaku jikan. So remember, jikan means time. Dochaku means arrival, so it's arrival time. Okay, and then H is mukae ni ikimasu. Mukae means it's like to pick someone up, basically, is what this sentence is, or this phrase is. So ikimasu means to go. So mukae is like you'll pick someone up, kind of. So this phrase is I will pick you up. Okay, and then I, it's moraimasu, which means to receive something. Okay, and then looking at the next page on 121, at the top here with the boxes, the first one says, the green one on the right here, it says meiru. And we already went over kuko, which is the second green box, which means airport. Okay, and then looking at the little box right here, we're going to look at some words that we haven't used before. So A is one we haven't seen yet, which is chekushimasu. So chekushimasu, I asked Imo Sensei about this. It can be used in a variety of different ways. So it could be like, please give me like the check for something, like a check that you write on, or can you please check on something? And basically, cheku, it just can be used with any version of how you would use the word check in English. You just have to make sure it fits with shimasu, because shimasu means to do something. So yeah, that's what that means, kind of. Okay, and then we went over B and C already. Kakimasu, it means to write something. E we went over, and then F we also went over. So let's look at the kanji. The first one, remember it's down here on the same page. It says kaisha, which means company. Honsha again means main office. Shisha means branch office. Shucho means business trip. Kuko means airport once again. Shuppatsu means departure. Do do cho dochaku means arrival. Gozen means morning and gogo means afternoon. Sorry if I'm stuttering a little bit. I don't know why I'm having a hard time reading this morning. Okay, and then looking at the little words, the sentences below. Number one, it says 私はコンピューターの会社で働いています. So computer is computer. Number two, any words that we don't know in here? Raishu means next week. So rai is the prefix for like in the future, like next kind of. And then it says Tokyo no honsha kara Shito which is the city of Sydney in Australia. Okay, and then we know the rest of the words there. Okay. We know those words. So very common sentence that you will see for arrival and departure times is number 4. So it says 出発時間は午前12時で到着時間は午後10時です. So that means your departure time is at 12 in the morning. And then your arrival time is 10 in the afternoon. So you'll see that a lot in this chapter, like the sentence structure of that. Moving to the next page. Okay, let's see. The first thing, the 1, 2, 3, 4 lines down in the little reading practice thing that's up here. It says, スペインのマドリード, which is Madrid. So in Spain, Madrid, に行きました. So you went to Madrid, which is in Spain. Okay, going to the first concept, we're going to be looking at right here. It's 見たことがあります. So you're going to be putting the verb in ta form this time. ことがあります. So you're stating whether someone has experienced doing said verb. So ta form is almost exactly like te form, except instead of te, you're going to put ta. Or in some cases, you would put da. So like, remember how there's nomimas turns into nonde in te form? Instead, you would put it into nonda. So it's not ta in this case. So you just kind of have to look at the verb. We're going to be looking at the grammar notes that Sensei has for a few examples of that. So a few examples in the book. We're just going to be going through each of the 3 groups. So ikimasu turns into ita. Remember little tsu, ita. Okurimasu turns into okutte. Or sorry, in te form it's okutte. So you're going to change it to okutta. Hatarakimasu turns into hataraite, which in ta form is hataraita. Moraimasu turns into morotte, which in ta form is morotta. Mimasu turns into mite, which then turns into mita. Shimasu turns into shite, which turns into shita. Hopefully that makes a bit more sense. If that doesn't, just let me know and I'll try to explain it a little bit better. So let's look at the first note, or the first class note that Sensei has. Okay, so it's right here. It's going to be under modules. So it's going to be under, not this one. It's going to be under language and, no, it's not. It's going to be under, I'm like so out of order because I'm like done with the course basically. So I'm like, wait, where am I? Okay, so it's going to be under topic 7. So 13 and 14 are going to be under here. And then we're also going to be looking at the class notes, which are under class note. And we're going to be looking at 13 and 14 grammar. So the first one, which is under topic 7, lesson 13, verb ta koto ga arimasu. So you're talking about your experience. Vita koto ga arimasu. Okay, so just like in TEF form, you're going to have your ichiri. You're going to turn that into itte. So kaimasu turns into katte. Machimasu turns into matte. Or sorry, mata. So kata, mata, kaerimasu turns into kaeta. Okay, and then for your ni, bi, mi turns into nde. So remember, shinimasu, shinda, osobimasu turns into osonda, yomimasu turns into yonda. Okay, and then you have your ki. Ki turns into ita. So kakimasu turns into kaita. Gi is going to turn into ida. Remember, ki and gi. Ita, ida. So oyogimasu turns into oyoida. Shimasu turns into shita. Hanashimasu, hanashita. Ikimasu is its own little special thing. So ikimasu turns into ita. Okay, and if it just has regular mas, you're going to turn it into, you're just going to add the ta, like you would with tabete. You drop the mas and just add te, same thing. Tabete, tabeta. Okay, okimasu turns into okita. Tabemasu turns into tabeta. Okay, and then we went over shi and ki already. So shita and kita. Okay, and here's one example. Nihon ni itta koto ga arimasu. I have been to Japan. So you have experience with something, which is koto ga arimasu. Ita is showing that you have, it's a verb showing that you have done something, and nihon is the noun. Okay, so hopefully that kind of explains ta koto ga arimasu. Okay, so let's see on the next page if there's anything. No. On number 2, on the bottom of page 122, right here, right before the particle o, if you can see that. I don't know if you can see that. Right here, number 2, right before the o, it says tsu, tsu, tsu with a long u, tsuyaku, which means like finally. So like you're finally doing something. That's kind of how you would use that word. Okay. Then going to page 124, we're going to look at the little text speech right here, because there's a few words in there that I don't think we've gone over before. Okay, it says choto heya. Heya means word, or sorry, heya means room. Heya o check shimasu. So please, so choto is like excuse me or like a little bit. So choto heya o check shimasu. So like wait a little bit. Could you please check my room? And then it's the next line says denki wa. So denki is electricity. Denki wa daijoubu desu. So electricity is okay. Demo, so but, chotto kurasugimasu ne. So kurasugimasu ne is, let's break that down. So kurasugimasu. So sugimasu is the next concept we're going to be talking about. So if you have experience with something that is excessive and thus not very good. So kara is the root of kurai, which means dark. So you're going to drop the e, kura sugimasu, and then ne. It's like, oh, it's pretty dark in here, right? And then they respond back, kurai desu ka? Daijoubu desu yo. And then that's also using the next concept, which is joining two sentences together using ga. So it's like either the first part of the sentence has to be positive, and then the next part has to be the opposite of that. So if it's positive, it's negative. If it's negative, it's positive, kind of. So he's saying kurai desu ka, which is a negative thing, and then he says daijoubu desu yo, which is a positive thing. Okay, and then he says so desu ka. So that's some of the words in there that we don't know yet. So let's look at the concept and then we'll go over some more words. Same page, 124, right here in the middle. It says e adjective, na adjective, or verb plus sugimasu. So remember, this is when a speaker thinks that something expressed by the e adjective and the na adjective or the verb is excessive and thus not very good. So some examples of how to conjugate this into sugimasu. Remember, kurai is dark. You're going to drop the e. Kura, add sugimasu. Kura, sugimasu. Okay, for not adjectives, for the example is shizuka, shizukana, so which means quiet. You're going to drop the na. So shizuka, add sugimasu. Shizuka, sugimasu. Okay, and then for verbs, you're just going to drop the mas because the verb's going to be in mas form. You're going to drop the mas. So for the example, it's tabemasu. So you're going to drop mas, tabe, add sugimasu, tabe sugimasu. So we're going to look at some examples in the class notes real quick and then come back to this and look at some vocab words that we don't know. So let's look at that. Okay. Okay, so remember when you're talking about too much of something in a negative way. But remember that the first part of the sentence can be positive. The second part just has to be negative. You have to flip it. You can't say two things that are positive or two things that are negative. Or sorry, no, that's the next concept. Sorry. Yeah. So this one, it's basically a negative connotation most of the time. Is when something is excessive. So yes. So the first example is kono hoteru wa taka sugimasu. So remember, I drop the e, becomes taka sugimasu. Okay, so このホテルは高すぎます. This hotel is too expensive. Okay. Second example is ここは. So この is like this. ここ is like there. Or like here. Sorry, yeah. ここ is like here. So ここは静か. Remember, this is an adjective. She dropped the na. 静か. Na becomes 静か. Add すぎます. 静かすぎます. ちょっと kawaii desu. So kawaii means scary. So it's too quiet in here, so it's a bit scary. Okay, this one is a pretty common phrase that you will hear when like you're hungry. So it's onaka ga ippai desu. Tabe sugimashita. So onaka is your stomach. Ippai is like you're full. So, and then you're saying that you ate something. So you're full because you ate too much, because this is talking about excess, and sugi is showing that something is done in excess. So taberu, put that in mas form, or if you just want to have it in dictionary form, you can just say, oh, I'm dropping the like ru part of taberu. So tabe sugimasu. Hopefully that explains that a little bit. I know it's a bit confusing to conjugate it, but it's fairly easy once you practice it a little bit. Okay, and then going back to page 124 in the Rikai textbook, at the bottom, we're going to be looking at some vocab words, or some words that we haven't gone over yet. Okay, so the first one says, この部屋は, so this room, エアコンをチェックします. So aircon, so エアコン is aircon. チェックします is please check the aircon. Okay. And then the second one says, このホテルはとてもいいですよ. Or sorry, とてもいいです. So it's either saying, oh, this hotel is pretty good. Demo, nedan ga, and then blank. So nedan is price. So it's probably going to be like, oh, but the price is expensive because it's saying demo. So demo is but. Okay, and then number 3, it says kono hoteru wa blank mayoimasu. So mayoimasu means to get lost, which I'm pretty sure we went over a few lessons ago. Okay, for kono hea wa blank choto kowai desu. So kowai once again means scary. Kino, which is tomorrow. Kino no yoru, which means night. Blank. Kyo wa hayaku, sorry. Kyo wa hayaku kaerimasu. So kyo is today. Hayaku means fast and kaerimasu means to return. So typically that's you use that when you're returning home. Okay, and then looking at the bottom of that page with the A, B, C, D, E, samu sugimasu. So that's using samui, which means cold, turning it into sugimasu. So it's too cold. Shizuka sugite. So you're putting it into te form. Weird enough. So sugite instead of sugimasu. So it's too quiet. Taka sugimasu. It's too expensive. Oki sugite. Once again, it's in te form. Oki it means big, so it's saying it's too big. And then e is nomi sugi mashita, so you drank too much. Okay, and then looking at the next page, 125. Looking at the second line of the first example, it says isogashi desu. Isogashi means busy. And then you would put that into te form because it's the first part of the sentence and you're saying it's something about it is excessive. Then it says zenzen jikan ga arimasen. So zenzen means not at all, and then jikan means time, so they don't have any time. Okay, and then looking at the second example, the second line, the very last part of it, after the comma, it says nemui desu, which means sleepy. And then the line right after that says jodan desu yo, which means it's a joke. Okay. I think everything before the next example we know. Yep. So then we're going to look at the next concept right here on page 125. So I briefly talked about this earlier. It's combining two sentences with ga. So instead of saying demo, you could use ga because it has to be either a positive in the first sentence and then a negative, or it has to be a negative, then a positive. You can't have two positives or two negatives. So let's look at the examples that Sensei has. Okay. So I know this is a bit jumbled. Sorry about that. My mic picked this up when I breathe kind of forcefully. So this is used when describing good or bad points about something. So yes, I know this is a bit confusing. So it can be noun wa or ga, and then it could be any number of these connections. It looks like. So noun one, wa or ga, noun 2, des. Okay, and then it could be noun 3 or 4. Sorry, noun 3, wa or ga, noun 4, des. Okay, and then it could be adjective, des, combined with, it could be an adjective or an adjective. There just has to be a ga combining each of these. So it can be adjective, des, ga, adjective, des. Or it can be adjective, non-adjective, combined with ga. So adjective, des, ga, non-adjective, des. Same thing, it could be non-adjective, des, ga, adjective, des, or adjective desu ka, adjective des. You can also do verbs. So you could do verb 1 mas ka, verb 2 mas. So it's basically sentence 1 combined with ga, and then sentence 2. Okay, so let's look at some examples. Kono, which is this. Kono hoteru wa furui desu ka? So it's old. Kirei desu. So even though it's old, it's still pretty. So this hotel is old, but it's pretty. So remember, since old can kind of have a negative connotation in this sentence, you want to combine it with a positive thing in the next sentence. So you can't say, oh, it's old, but it's expensive, because those would be considered two negative things. You can't do that. It has to be either negative and a positive or positive and a negative. Okay, so the next example is kono hoteru wa kirei desu ka? So positive thing, it's pretty. Nedan ga takai desu. So the price is expensive. So you're combining a positive with a negative thing. The hotel is beautiful, but it's expensive. Okay, this would technically be number 3, but whatever. Aircon wa, so aircon, so the air conditioner. Aircon wa arimasu ka? So there is an air conditioner, which would be a positive thing because most people like air conditioning. Kowarete imasu. Kowarete imasu, which means broken. So even though there's an aircon in the hotel room, it's broken, which is a negative thing. Okay, and then the last example is koko wa. So here, koko wa atarashi, which means new. Machi desu ka? So there's a new city, which is a positive thing. Choto fuben desu. So it's a bit inconvenient. So even though there's a new city, it's probably a little bit inconvenient to get to. Okay, here's a note. Once again, sentence 1, if it has a positive connotation, 2 has to have a negative connotation. If sentence 1 has a negative connotation, sentence 2 has to have a positive connotation, or else the sentence doesn't make sense because it's ga is basically replacing demo. So you're saying this is cool, but this is bad, or this is bad, but this is good. Okay, so looking back at the Rikai textbook, we're going to be looking at page 125 at the bottom. Once again, the examples, just to go over a few words that we probably don't know yet. Number 2, it says shawa no oyu wa dekimasu. Dekimasu ka? And then the rest of the sentence. So shawa is shower, oyu is hot water. Okay, and then the last example, number 4, kono hoteru wa eki ni, which eki is station, like a train station. Chikakute, so which means to be close to. Benri desu ka? So benri is convenient. And then there's the blank. You would add A, B, C, or D in here. We already know all of those. The only one I don't think we went over is nurui. Nurui desu. So nurui is wet, the word for wet. So something's wet. Okay, I believe that's all the words that we didn't go over, and that's all the concepts. So let's look at the Katsudo textbook really quick. So let me look through that and see if there's anything we need to go over. Okay, there are indeed some things we need to go over. So looking at the Katsudo textbook on page 104, number 5, it says Huraito slash bin. So Huraito is flight, and bin is also another way to say that. But it's like the Japanese word for it. I also found translation for it where it says it's mail, letter, or post. So do that with that information. Do what you will with it. Okay, and then 106 at the bottom with the little pictures with the dude sitting in the plane right here. A says kaiteki, kaiteki, which means comfortable. And then D says jisa, which means time difference. So G is like the word for time. and then jisa is time difference. And then looking at the little reading example on page 107, I'll just kind of read it really quick because there's a few things in here that's not really explained. So the first one is the purple one. It says Tanaka-san kochi desu. So kochi is here. The second one says yokozo Tanaka-san. So yokozo is like welcome. Then Tanaka-san says o mata se shimasu or se shimashita, which means thank you for waiting. And then he says demu ka e arigatou gozaimasu. So thank you for welcoming me. And then whoever this person is, she says otsukare same deshita. Otsukare sama deshita, which means good work. And then she says furaito wa ikaga deshita ka? How was your flight? And she could also say furaito wa dou deshita ka? How was your flight? So it's just kind of two different ways of saying that. And then Tanaka-san could either say kaiteki deshita yo, which means it was comfortable, or he could say mama deshita, so it was so-so. And then the person says back so desu ka, which is like, oh, is that so? And or they say that to this line, chotto tsukare mashita. So I'm a little bit tired. And they say so desu ka, and then they say suitemashita. Suitemashita is I was hungry. So kind of implying, okay, I got off my flight. Let's go eat now. So I believe that's all in the textbooks that we had to go over. No, there's one more thing. On the next page, 108, is the little pictures of the guy in the hotel room doing stuff. C is danwa, which means phone. D is kagi, which means key, which I believe is in the other textbook, but I don't believe I went over it. But it's there. So the last thing we have to go over is the stuff that Sensei has for the overall grammar notes. Okay, so this is just going over the forms again. Koto ga arimasu. Remember putting the verb into ta form, not te form. Okay, and then the second one is o shiteimasu ka, which is do you know something? It's not really gone over in the textbook, but it's like, do you know something about this? You can either say hi, shiteimasu, yes I know, or ie shirimasen, so no I do not know. Okay, and then there's the sugimasu. Something is to of whatever verb it is. And then 4 is conjoining two sentences, which is equal to saying sentence 1, but sentence 2. You're just putting it into one whole sentence. Okay, so this shows you the different ways to conjugate things into ta form. I won't go over all of them, but it's good review. So if you're like, oh, how do I conjugate that into ta form? It has it in mas form, then te form, then ta form. So you can know exactly how to do it. Okay, and then there's the noun o shiteimasu ka. So here you would put a noun. So what's a noun? Kuko. Yeah, kuko o shiteimasu ka. So do you know like about the airport, or like kind of like how do you know how to get there is kind of the implied intention of that phrase. You can either say hi, shiteimasu, or ie, shirimasen. Okay, and then the next one, it goes over shirimasu. If you don't know how to conjugate some of the words, you can look right in here and be like, that's how I do it. Here are some e adjectives. Remember, it's pretty easy. Just drop the e, add sugimasu. Here are the not adjectives. Most of them don't typically have the not attached to it, so most of the time it's just the word plus sugimasu. But if you do see a not at the end of an e adjective, make sure to drop it. For verbs, you're gonna drop the mas for the original one, or if it's in its base form. So for taberu, that's the dictionary form. But if it's in mas form, it's tabemasu. So remember, just drop either the ru or the whatever the end of the verb is, and then add sugimasu. Okay, and then for, remember it's sentence one, ga, sentence two, it's basically equal to saying sentence one, period, demo, sentence two. So, sushi wa oishii desu ka? Takai desu. So, the way to put this in demo, which would be two sentences, is sushi wa oishii desu, demo takai desu. So it kind of just depends on how you want to frame it. If you want to pause after saying the first sentence, you could use demo, but if you just want to make it a continuous sentence, use ga. Okay, second example is Nihon wa kirei desu ka? Skoshi toi desu. So even though Japan is pretty, there's a lot of people. Put this in demo, you would say Nihon wa kirei desu. Demo skoshi toi desu. Okay, and then the last example is Ototo wa genki desu ka? Mainichi isogashi desu. So this is saying that I'm already forgetting words. It's in early morning. Ototo is your younger brother. So genki is like lively or like in good spirits. So even though he's in good spirits, every day he's busy. So putting this in demo, you could say ototo, whatever. Ototo wa genki desu. Demo mainichi isogashi desu. So that's kind of how you conjugate each of those. And that's all of lesson 13. So I'm going to do lesson 14 in a separate video because it looks like my Zoom is being weird again. So look forward to lesson 14 in the next video. Thanks. Sayonara.